it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing another Which One is Better, and at this point I've done several of these on my channel, so I will have my playlist linked down below in case anyone is interested. But today the two books that I am talking about are two books that have been compared a lot, so I decided why not? I guess it's my turn. These are two books that I have been wanting to read for a while now, so I decided to go ahead and pick those two books up. And the two books that I am talking about are The Revival of Opal and Nev and Daisy Jones and the Six. And usually how I go about doing these videos is I will go ahead and start with a brief synopsis over the two books, and then I will go ahead and tell you guys which one I thought was better. I will give a bit of a breakdown over why I chose the one that I did. I will go ahead, give you guys my star rating, and then be done. So we will go ahead and get started. So the first one that I'm going to start with is The Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie, Walton. And I'm starting with this one just because this is the first one that I started with myself. And this one starts off in the present day, which for this book, the present day is, I believe, 2016. And so we have Opal, who is this African-American woman, and she decides to reach out to this music journalist by the name of Sonny Shelton. And she reaches out to Sonny because her music partner, Nev, reached out and said that he wanted to do this revival show, and Nev is this white British man, and Opal is kind of hesitant on whether or not she wants to be involved with this show because it's been a long time since they have done any performances together, but she's really considering doing it. But she wants this book written that will kind of tell people how her and Nev have gotten together. But we find out very early on in this book, and when I say early on, I mean like within like the first 5 pages of this book, that Opal has a connection to Sonny. And we find out that Opal had been having an affair with Sonny's father back in the day when Opal and Nev were in their group. When she was involved with Sonny's father, Jimmy, who was actually their drummer, he was married to Sonny's mother. And we also learn that Jimmy died during a riot that happened right before Opal and Nev became really popular. So Sonny was actually aware of the relationship her father Jimmy had with Opal, and she was aware of how her father died, but she decided that she was going to go ahead and write this book for Opal. And so she figured that if she did this for Opal, that she can actually get some more insight into the night that her father died. So this book is told in interview format, starts off in like the early 1960s. We get some insight into Opal's upbringing as well as Nev's upbringing and how the group came together. It focuses a lot on the riot and the events that led up to that, the night of the riot, and exactly what took place and all the people that were involved. And we get some revelations into exactly what happened, and some of those revelations are different than what people were led to believe actually took place that day. And then we learn what exactly brought Opal and Nev apart and what is leading them back together in the present day. So that is what this is about. So then the next one I have is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this one is another adult historical fiction. It's also told in interview style format. It also starts in like the late 60s to the early 80s, that time frame. And it basically follows our main character, Daisy Jones, who started off as a solo act, to her then joining this group, the Six, then becoming this iconic rock band, to them performing this epic show in Chicago, to them disbanding. So we learn all of this information again through interviews. And so that's basically what this one is about. So usually, like when I do these, which one of these is better, I end up either really hating both of the books, or I have either really hated one and really enjoyed the other one, or one of them was okay and I really enjoyed the other one. But in this situation, which I was actually pleasantly surprised, I really enjoyed both of them. I enjoyed both of them for different reasons, even though they're kind of like the exact same book. But I just really enjoyed them. I'll go ahead and give you guys my rating because they're the same rating. I gave them both 4 stars. They were very, very enjoyable. Before I jump into my individual reviews for each of these, I'll just go ahead and start off with one of the things that I enjoyed about each of them because I took them in the same way. So we'll start off with that. But like I said, I just really, really enjoyed both of these, and I'm happy that I finally got to both of these. So I just wanted to start off and say that I listened to both of these on audiobook, and I would definitely say listen to these on audio if you're gonna pick these up, just because both of them are told in interview style format, which they are both narrated by full cast of narrators. And because of that, I feel like the narrators were able to bring these stories to life. Now, even though I did enjoy both of these on audiobook, I will say that there was a downside to each of these, and I think that there was a big missed opportunity with each of these in regards to the audiobook. Now, the downside to Opal and Nev on the audiobook was that this is kind of broken up with editor's notes and footnotes. Now, I don't read a lot of books that have like footnotes in them. So when I was listening to this on audiobook and we would be in the middle of like listening to people's interviews, and then all of a sudden, right after someone would be speaking and it would jump to a footnote, to me, that was kind of jarring, and it was something that I had to get used to. So if you are somebody that already might listen to audiobooks that might include like footnotes, and you already are used to something like that, that might not bother you. But for me, that was something that I had to get used to and did not realize that this book included footnotes. But once I was used to that, it was fine and it didn't bother me so much, because the footnotes, I mean, it added additional information. So, I mean, at a certain point, I guess they were needed, but it was definitely something that I had to get used to. As far as Daisy Jones in the Six, the thing that kind of got me in this one was that in the group, the Six, it was primarily made up of men. And in the very beginning of this, they didn't really introduce like different characters. So before somebody would start speaking, they wouldn't say like Warren and then give the dialogue, and then this person and then give the dialogue. So when the men would start speaking, it was hard for me to distinguish the voices in the very beginning. So luckily I had a physical copy so that I could kind of like follow along until I got used to the voices. But then a little bit further along in the book, they would start introducing the voices. So they would start saying the name and then give you the dialogue. So I was like, okay, fine, that works. But then when you go a little bit farther into the book, they stopped doing that. So they would switch back and forth between whether or not they were going to tell you the name or not tell you the name before somebody started speaking. And that was jarring for me, because I didn't know if I needed to make sure I was paying attention to like the voice so that I would remember who is who, or just know that they were going to tell me who was who. So I just had to make sure that I had the book around anytime that I was listening, in case I wasn't paying attention to the voice, in case they started flipping back and forth on whether or not you know, they were going to tell me who was who, because sometimes I wouldn't be paying attention to that. I would be so sucked into the story, but then sometimes I would be forgetting to listen to who was who, and I would forget who was who, if that makes sense. So that was the only thing that I didn't really like about this one as far as the audiobook. Now, I did mention that there was like a really big missed opportunity with the audiobook, and with both of these books, we are talking about bands and music, and there was no music in these audiobooks. We had like no instrumentals, no singing, no nothing. And I just thought that was a huge miss on the part of these audiobooks. Big kudos for having the full cast and it, you know, it flowing like an interview. But I just felt like this would have really sealed the deal if we would have had, you know, some sort of music incorporated into these audiobooks, especially when they started describing, you know, the concerts and stuff that these bands were performing at. Now, I will give kudos to Daisy Jones and the Six, because the version of the audiobook that I listened to, at the very end, after you listen to like all of the credits, you did get an instrumental for one of the popular songs that was mentioned in the book. So that was nice, but you had to wait till you got to the very end of the book. I just think for both of these books, if they would have had some sort of music or something incorporated in them, it would have just really, like I said, sealed the deal with both of these. But again, if you're gonna pick these up, I would highly recommend the audiobook for both of them. So I'm gonna jump into a little bit more detail about Opal and Nev. So again, with the story, just feeling like the author was able to bring this story to life. One of the things that I really enjoyed that this author was able to do, and why this group felt even more real that Daisy Jones and the Six did, was that this author actually incorporated real life events and real entertainers. So during the time period that this was set, this author actually incorporated events from those time periods. So for this group, Opal was what you would call an activist. They both wanted to talk about real life events and things that were going on in the world, and they wanted to incorporate that into their music, which they did, and which also caused quite a bit of problems for the group, and which also made them stand out from a lot of the groups that were out during their time. But the author also, like I said, incorporated a lot of real life events. And this wasn't necessarily what was in their music, but this was like things that were like taking place around that time that they were coming up, and just things that were happening in the world that just made it seem like this group was actually real. So it was like, she had mentioned something about like Watergate. She had mentioned the bombing in Birmingham with the 4 little girls. She had mentioned, I think she had mentioned like President Nixon. She had mentioned, this was like way after the group was together, but like the Black Lives Matter movement. She, like I said, she was just mentioning like a lot of actual events that just took place around the time the group was together. And then she mentioned a lot of real life people. So like President Nixon. And then when she was getting interviews from people that were talking about the group, she mentioned like Quentin Tarantino, because I think like Nev had written a song that was in like one of his movies or something like that. And then it was like other entertainers like SZA and Questlove and like people like that were like mentioning this group. So it just made it seem like you could Google Opal and Nev and you would pull up a whole like Wikipedia page about them or something. It just made it seem like they were so real. I liked both of these characters. Well, I'm not going to say I like both of these characters, because you start off liking one of them and by the end of them, you probably don't like them so much anymore, but they're both so different. And because they are so different, you just wonder at a certain point how these two people even came together. Because at the very beginning, I mentioned that Opal is this, you know, African-American woman. She was raised in Detroit. You have Nev, who was this white British man over from England who came over to the States to pursue his musical career. They came together and formed this group, and they were playing rock music, which, I mean, that I'm sure that looked odd to a lot of people, which was odd to a lot of people. And in the beginning, they got a lot of pushback for their music, and a lot of people didn't know what to expect when they were going out to clubs trying to play their music. So when they were going out to white clubs, they didn't really know what to expect, especially when they seen Opal, because one, she was Black and she didn't have the traditional look. She had alopecia, so she lost all of her hair. And so she was really dark skinned. And so, like I said, she didn't have that traditional look. And when she came out on stage, they just automatically assumed that she was going to play R&B music. And then when they went to black clubs, they didn't know what type of music they were going to get. So they had a rough time trying to build this audience with their music. And then, of course, the messaging behind their music, because they're trying to have like this political statement behind their music. So it was really interesting to see this group come together and try to make it in the music business. It was interesting getting the look inside this riot that was kind of like the center of the story. Because like I said, the person that was quote unquote writing this book for Opal was the daughter of the drummer, Jimmy, who was killed during this riot. And so that's kind of what this book was leading up to. And so that was also one of my downsides to this book. And it was a kind of like a minor issue that I had, because we're leading up to this riot. We are trying to figure out what happened, what the real story was, what really started this riot, who was really behind it. And it actually happened in like the middle of the book. And so after it happened, the pacing of it kind of slowed down, and you're kind of left with that sense of what now? Like, what are we doing now? You know, we got all the information, so what now? So it just kind of like slowed down. I still enjoyed it afterwards, and things were still kind of happening. It just happened slower. It was like that thing that you were waiting for happened already. So you kind of weren't really expecting anything else. So in that sense, you know, the big reveal was over. But I still really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed how real the characters were. And I enjoyed the character of Opal and how she started off as like this young girl that didn't really know what she wanted to do, because she was actually raised with her sister, who was more of a vocalist but didn't want to be famous. So it kind of went to Opal, who made herself into this famous singer and then turned into this activist where people looked up to her, and she actually helped a lot of people. And then you had Nev, who started off as, you know, wanting to create this iconic group, wanting to be this partner with Opal and, you know, be another activist right alongside with her, but then turned into this guy that was just all about numbers and just fame and how can I get to like the next level, and didn't really care about who he stepped on to get there. So I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this way more than I thought I was going to. So I was pleasantly surprised. So on the flip side of the revival of Opal and Nev, we have Daisy Jones and the Six. And this one, it's literally us just following Daisy Jones, who was this girl that was raised by two parents who, in my opinion, neglected her. And she started off at a very young age. I think she was like 14, and she was out here in LA, up at Sunset Strip, doing everything she shouldn't have been doing, up in clubs, doing drugs, hard drugs at that, having sex at a young age, basically just trying to be accepted, and finding out that she had a musical talent and able to write songs. And she eventually became this solo star. And then you had, on the flip side of that, you had this group called The Six, who started off with just two brothers, and then they ended up adding some other members. And you're also following another main character by the name of Billy. So this is your typical rock band story where you're following these musicians who are just all about like sex and drugs and infidelity and partying after shows and like destroying hotel rooms and the drama like within groups. But it also just feels like so much more than that, because you have Billy, who is the lead singer of the Six, who is also kind of the person that's holding this group on his back, because not only is he the lead singer, but he's also the person that's making all the decisions for the group. He's writing all of the songs for the group, and he was dealing with an addiction, but he went and got himself clean, and now he's fighting to stay clean, and he's fighting with his sobriety. Then you have Daisy, who is struggling with addiction. And so you have these two people who are great at what they do, and they also are fighting these demons within them, and they're in this iconic rock group. And so you're following all of this. And then you have not only that, but you have all of this drama within their groups. So you have, before she got with the Six, you had her, fighting her own battles, being a solo star, because she's not feeling like she's able to take control of her career. And then, she gets in the Six, and then she has to fight to make sure that she's treated as an equal. And then you have the drama that's going on within the Six, because everybody feels like Billy's taking control, but I'm pretty sure if he wasn't the one that was taking control, would they really be the iconic group that they were without him? So you're just seeing all of that take place within this group. And I was here for it. I was here for all of the drama. The only thing that's really stopping, this one wasn't so much like the pacing or anything was slow or anything like that. I just wish that it was just a little bit more than just us seeing them disband, because I feel like in the revival of Opal and Nev, we had this thing that we were leading up to. So we were leading up to this riot, which to me was really interesting, because when we got to the riot, it really felt like I was there. And then when we got to like the part where, we're leading up to like this final show in Chicago, and we're about to see why they disbanded. Okay, we got there, and then I just felt like the book kind of ended, and it was like, okay, they're over. Now we're about to wrap this thing up and we're done. That's kind of how I felt like this one ended. It was like it wrapped up really quickly. And I wish maybe if we were like leading up to something else, or if something else was like happening, maybe it wouldn't have ended like that. Or maybe I'm just being really picky. I'm not sure, but that's just how this one felt to me. But other than that, just like Opal and Nev, I really liked it. I really liked the two main characters, because even though it's Daisy Jones in the Six, I really think there was two main characters in this one. It was Daisy Jones and Billy, the lead singer from the Six, because we got a lot of information on him as well. So I really enjoyed Daisy Jones and the Six, and I really enjoyed the revival of Opal and Nev. Even though these seem like two very similar books, they are about two rock bands. They come from the same era. And you know what would have been really interesting is if both of these groups would have crossed paths at some point. That would have been cool to see. But they're both told in interview style format. I would definitely say if you've read one, read the other. I think you would enjoy it. Maybe not to the same extent you've enjoyed the other one, but I think you would definitely enjoy them, especially if you listen to them on audiobook. But yeah, give these both a try, because these are both great reads. But that is all that I have for you guys. And again, I will leave my Which One Is Better playlist link down below in case anyone is interested. And that is all that I have for you guys. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.